connective tissues, besides that, it provides a matrix that supports and physically connects other tissues and cells together in the form of organs. The interstitial fluid of connective tissue gives metabolic support to cells as the medium for diffusion of nutrients and waste products. So it acts as an aid for the support of different parts of tissues, and it acts like a messenger that connects those different parts, whether cells or fibers. Unlike the other tissue types, which are the epithelium, muscle, and the nerves, which consist mainly of cells, the major constituent of connective tissue is the extracellular matrix. Extracellular matrices consist of different combinations of protein fibers such as collagen, elastin, and muscular, and the ground substance. However, extracellular matrix is the protein fiber, different types of protein fiber plus the ground substance. The embryonic development of connective tissue. Connective tissue originates from the embryonic layer, which is called mesenchyme, which mainly develops from the middle layer of the embryo, the mesoderm. Mesenchyme consists largely of viscous brown substance with a few collagen fibers and few cells. Mesenchymal cells are those undifferentiated cells that all the cells of connective tissue arise, mostly all of them. And these cells has a characteristic feature of large nuclei, prominent nucleolus, and fine chromatin inside them. They are often said to be spindle-shaped, with their scant cytoplasm extended as two or more cytoplasmic processes. So in addition to producing all types of connective tissue, proper and specialized connective tissue, which is the bone and the cartilage, the embryonic mesenchyme includes stem cells for other tissues such as blood, okay? And the vascular endothelium plus the muscle. Our lecture today focuses on the connective tissue proper. We have classification of general connective tissue. One part is the connective tissue proper, as we will show you in the classification table. So regarding the origin of cells, we mentioned that the layer as a whole, the mesenchymal layer, will give origin to the connective tissue, while the cells of the mesenchyme layer, which are the mesenchymal cell, as you see here in the diagram, it will form the origin of all, most of all cells of the connective tissue. طبعا لأن الدياجرام بس الماس cell اللي كلها بس هو أجر سيري زوربير الفرنسكانكي mass cell originates from the hemophytic pleurotic tissue, so not from the mesenchymal cell. بس بعد التبس ده which is rarely بس أكاكا mesenchymal cell original. You see here on the left this slide for the mesenchymal tissue. Characteristically, we have here a few number of cells, mesenchymal cells, that differentiate later to form the different types of connective tissue cells. And we have here, in between the cells, the mesenchymal cells, abundant amount of connective tissue, or ground substance, sorry. So less cell, less fibers, and more ground substance. This is the characteristic feature of the mesenchymal type of tissue. Regarding the components of the connective tissue in general, we have this table here that shows us the components of connective tissue in general. So we have mainly the cells, different types of cells. These cells either intrinsic components of these cells, and when we say intrinsic, we mean the residential cells of the connective tissue, or fixed cells. Those cells, they are fixed in the connective tissue and remain there. And we have the migratory type or related cells of the connective tissue, as mentioned here in the table. Regarding the other component is fibers, and the fibers of the connective tissue are of three types. Collagen is the most predominant, and reticular and elastic fibers. Also, we have in between the spaces between the cells of the connective tissue and the fibers, different types of fibers, the intercellular ground substance. We will discuss later this. Regarding this schematic diagram here, it shows you the different cellular and extracellular components of the connective tissue, whether the extracellular matrix, as we mentioned, the extracellular matrix, which is the spaces in between between the cells and the fibers. These are the fibers, different types of fibers, and these are the cells, different types of cells. In between, the spaces are filled with the ground substance. And the ground substance, as we mentioned, is composed of a group of anionic macromolecules. We will go through the details later in the lecture. Regarding the cells, we have here, for example, the resident cells or the fixed cells. So these are the, for example, the macrophages, adipocyte cells, and the fibroblasts. Regarding the connective tissue cells, so we have a group of cells, as we mentioned, the intrinsic components. In typical connective tissue, the most important cells are the fibroblasts. So the most common and the more predominant fixed cell of the connective tissue is the fibroblast. Other cells are the undifferentiated mesenchymal cells, pigment cells, and fat cells. Regarding those cells who are migratory, they come through the blood circulation, and later on they will go inside the connective tissue and do a particular function there. So these are the cells that belong to the immune system and are identical or closely related with certain cells present in the blood or the lymphoid tissue. These include macrophages, sometimes called lysocytes, mast cell lymphocytes, plasma cells, monocytes, and eosinophils. So we have this nice table here for the different types of cells in the connective tissue and their function, their related function. For example, the fibroblast, which is the most resident or fixed type of cells of the connective tissue. Their function is the extracellular fiber and blood substance synthesis. So they synthesize this extracellular material. Regarding the plasma cell, for example, it produces the antibodies, lymphocytes, it participates in the immune defense system. And for example, the macrophages for the process of phagocytosis and the release of different cytokines and other functions, many other functions for the macrophage. So it's important to study this table. And these are the different morphologies of the different cells of the connective tissue. So regarding the first type of the cell, which is the most common cell is the fibroblast. These are the most numerous cells of the connective tissue. They are called fibroblasts because they are concerned with the production of collagen fibers. يعني fiber ما نقول مسكا بيوتري fibroblasts. طبعا mostly مش ما نقول مسكا collagen. They also produce reticular and elastic fibers who are associated with reticular fibers that are usually called reticular cells. طبعا reticular fiber is certain organs or hair, but in general hair the largest population is in the lymphoid organs. So لوية أو cellanic reticular fiber معمول تروسكا synthesized. These are actually fibroblasts, but they are named here another name, which is the reticular cells. Reticular fiber معمول تروسكا. Fibroblasts are present in close relationship to collagen fibers. They are fixed cell with plasmaker. They are not mobile. In tissue section, these cells appear to be spindle-shaped and the nucleus appears to be flattened. When seen from the surface, a tiny image tissue process. From laterally, the series cell from lateral view, you see it is a spindle-shaped cell with large oval nucleus. Two levels of fibroblast activity can be observed histologically. Cells with intense synthetic activity are morphologically distinct from the quiescent fibroblasts that are scattered within the matrix. Active form here, باشا inactive form here. Active form كفibroblast cell here. كان is the fibrocyte cell. So the histologist reserve the term fibroblast to denote the active cell, which is larger, and with the cytoplasm filled with active Golgi complexes and rough endoplasmic reticulum, and the fibrocyte, which is smaller and thinner type of cell. The active fibroblast has more abundant and irregular granular cytoplasm. The nucleus is large, ovoid, and has prominent nucleolus. The cytoplasm has much more of endoplasmic reticulum and well-developed Golgi complex, as I mentioned. In these two slides, for example, on the right side, you can see the two different types of cells. large one, spindle-shaped with large ovoid nucleus. This is the fibroblast, which is the active form. While those thin and smaller with flattened nucleus, these are the fibrocytes. And in this slide, we can see the fibroblast, amana fibroblast, and fibrocyte yani. While in this slide, both of them are clear. The fibrocyte cell is smaller than the active. The cytoplasm is scanty, organelles are few, and the nucleus may become heterochromatic. Fibroblasts become very active when there is need to lay down collagen fiber. And حالتها أجل trauma heavy and wound heavy. So this scar or this tissue needs to be replaced by new tissue. So the fibroblast here will become active and will produce the collagen fibers that later on forms the scars that fills the wound. Okay? When the need arises, fibroblasts can give rise by division to more fibroblasts. They are, however, regarded to be specialized cells and cannot convert themselves to other cell types. And أول لو حالتي وندا connective tissue كمان بوربيسا كاتوا scar tissue man بوربيسا أمانة نقدر to convert to other types of cells. هل أمانته for this specialized function. Another type of cell is the undifferentiated mesenchymal cell. يعني أصلاً مو cell كان اللي originate هنا. These are embryonic connective tissue, which is called mesenchyme, the cells of the mesenchyme. It is made up of stellate small cells, as you see here in the schematic diagram below. On the right side, they are stellate-shaped small cells with slender branching processes that join to form a network between them. These are called undifferentiated mesenchymal cell. Here, on the left side, you can see the actual slide of the mesenchymal tissue and the mesenchymal cells. Ground substance with the fewer cells and fibers. Mostly they are collagen fibers. Regarding other types of cells, to discuss them is the fat cell, adipocyte. Again, this is a fixed type of cell of the connective tissue. Although some amount of fat or lipids present between the cytoplasm of the other cells, but mainly it is found in the adipocyte or fat cell in the form of a large fatty droplet. So these cells are called fat cells, adipocytes, or lipocytes. Adipocyte or lipocyte, in which aggregations of fat cells constitute adipose tissue. And group adipocyte adipose tissue. Each fat cell contains a large droplet of fat that almost fills it. The cytoplasm of the cell forms a thin layer just deep to the plasma membrane. The nucleus is pushed against the wall or the plasma membrane and is flattened, resembling a signet ring. Representation, schematic representation, you can see this adipocyte cell. The center is filled with the fat droplet. The preparation, the slide during the process of tissue processing or preparation of tissues. For examination in the microscope, we notice that the inside of the fat cells actually they are empty, because the lipid or the fat droplet actually evaporates during the process of baking. Okay, baking, so it will evaporate. The cell wall, as you can see here, this is the thin cell wall, and thin scanty cytoplasm remains with the flattened nuclei, as you see here. These are the nuclei of the cells pushed to the cell membrane. Again, the cell membrane. Regarding the macrophage cell, these are the cells sometimes called histiocytes also. They have the ability to phagocyte or eat up unwanted material, cell debris, bacteria, whatever. Macrophages are usually described as fixed. They are described as fixed. But when they are in the circulation, they are called mobile or free. Regarding the fixed macrophages, these resemble the fibroblasts in appearance, but free macrophages are not it. However, all macrophages are capable of becoming mobile when during the stimulation to antigens or bacteria or any foreign body. The nuclei of macrophages are smaller and stain more intensely than those of the fibroblasts. They are often kidney-shaped. With electron microscope, the cytoplasm is seen to contain numerous lysosomes that help in digesting material phagocytosed by the macrophages. Sometimes macrophages may fuse together to form multinucleated giant cell. However, again, the connective tissue have macrophage كمان fixed here. Okay, if there is a pathological condition or invasion by a foreign particle or a foreign body, sometimes these cells aggregate with each other, a group of macrophages, they become a large cell called giant multinucleated giant cell, or sometimes it is called epithelioid cell. باشا احتمال أن درس يترك كلمة epithelioid بالبستن أو عادة لpathological condition هي باشا in which the macrophages aggregate together and forming a large giant cell. And this is the diagram, shows the representation of the macrophage with the kidney-shaped, sometimes somewhat eccentric kidney-shaped nucleus. Ali rash the electron microscope أو يوضحها the nucleus, and these are the lysosomes. These dark structures, these are the lysosomes, which are responsible for the foreign body autolysis. And we have here the protrusion and indentation of the cell wall of the macrophage, which is a characteristic feature when the macrophages are in the state of function against foreign body. Which is a table for different types of macrophages in the body. In next modules, you have a different terminologies for the macrophage. Maybe you will be lost. So these cells, these different types of cells, all of them, they are part of the mononuclear phagocytic system, which is the defense mechanism against foreign body. They have different terminology in different organs. Monocyte is the precursor. Monocyte fish macrophage, this is the precursor of the macrophage. The rest are the terminology of different types of macrophages in the cell, in the body. For example, the macrophage in general. For example, in the connective tissue, we have the Kupffer cell in the liver. Macrophage in the liver, pyotic Kupffer cell. In the CNS, this is called microtubular cells. Okay, Langerhans cell, again, one type of macrophage which is found in the skin. So this is important, but this is important just for you. It's just for your information. Wait terminology زي macrophage وثاني شيء. Okay? طيب الله كيف بيشو؟ كان مو سيلا كان يكون التشوي تلاقوا زوربي وفانكشن ثاني أو مطلوبة Regarding the mast cell, again, it is another residential cell of the connective tissue, usually ovoid with a small centrally placed nucleus. The cytoplasm is normally filled with fine, closely packed granules. Granules يزور تيايا. تقريبا يعني nucleus كانت واني بيبيني أمام granules تيايا. So these granules are dense, staining granules closely associated with blood vessel. يعني أمثلة عادة nearby the blood vessel أيبيني. The connective tissue are nearby the blood vessel. لتوها أورجانيكان كتيايتي عادة لسكن respiratory GI tract بالمنا, and they release histamine. Chitaya أو granules histamine and heparin, but mainly histamine, in response to allergens, causing allergic reactions. طبيعي استحتمال يوم برسال كان أبرين بأم الشيء يسيلا كان بوش بزاني نيوكليس وايا بوش بزاني سيتوبلازم وايا أو مطلوب ليتان لبر أوي إليتو لجمع ميكروسكوب سيلا كبناسيتو. أجر characteristic هج سيلا نزاني, you cannot recognize it under light microscope, which is the main goal of this module. How to recognize types of cells, how to recognize their colors, how to recognize fibers, and in general to differentiate one organ from another organ. Basha? So we have to discuss the features of each cell. Regarding the plasma cell, they have a smaller eccentric placed nucleus, eccentrica, Basha, and have a condensed coarse chromatin clumps, and these clumps of chromatin arranged in two ways. One is central clump of chromatin, and a group of chromatins scattered around the cell wall, in the cytoplasm near the cell wall, forming a structure called cartwheel. لبعض textbook pyotric face clock. Pyotric face clock يعني لبلو يبقوا ساعات, يعني chromatin they are arranged like the numbers of the watch. So it is either in cartwheel arrangement or face block arrangement. أو شوية exoplasma cell and acetal. They are particularly abundant in the connective tissue of the lamina propria of the gastrointestinal tract, respiratory system, and the female reproductive system. كألين كلمة lamina propria ما بس منشيا ما بس من أو connective tissue كبشير epithelium أو tractanات. ولمنا أجل GI tract بيه وتمان الابيثيليوم بس ما كرت epithelium كيتشو تمان simple columnar epithelium. باشا بشير connective tissue which supports the epithelium. I'm connected to Lera chipi otilam tractana, whether the respiratory and GI tract and female reproductive, and urinary hormona, the outre lamina propria. Basha? However, a term lamina propria hat, and her definition hat a become like connective tissue, hello tractana here, which underlies and supports the epithelial sheets, epithelial tissue sheets. No. It's different from the basement membrane. The main basement membrane is related to the epithelial cell. And the basal epithelial cell here. Well, connective tissue, lamina propria, is another entity. It is the different type of tissue that supports the epithelial cells. Basement membrane is part of the epithelial cell. Okay? The plasma cells arise from B lymphocytes that come from the blood, and their function is to produce the antibodies against the antigens. Here are the slide of plasma cell man here, وبسبب كليرة الشانتية. أقدر تقبل سيلكا eccentrical nucleus okay, and we have two groups of chromatids, one central and the others are arranged around the wall of the nucleus in the form of cartwheel. Again, here is the same characteristic feature of the nucleus. Regarding the lymphocyte, as you know, it is part of the immune system again, and it is part of the white blood cells. A granulocyte present in the blood. They have large aggregations of, a group of aggregation of lymphocytes are present in the lymphoid tissue. مجموعة organ من هي lymphoid tissue من هي aggregation إلى سيلانيت هنا هرمون السكين إنك كلامنا. Those cells reach the connective tissue from their sources. باشا origin كيو. And they arise from the blood. Pluripotential stem cells, they are especially numerous when the tissues undergoes any state of inflammation, or infectious state. Regarding the eosinophils, they are called so because of presence of large number of eosinophilic granules. Telling eosinophilic granules ما بس منشيا أو granules they stain eosinophilic يعني رنين تميي area, which is a characteristic feature of this cell. under microscope. باشا لبلدا كسيري مثلا هرمون blood film okay وي سيلكان بناسي توازن or characteristic of this eosinophil because of these large number of granules which are pinkish to somewhat reddish in color. PO3 eosinophilic granules. They are found in the connective tissue of many organs. They have a characteristic bilobe, nucleus bilobe, so you can easily recognize it and differentiate it from the other cells. They increase in general in parasitic infection. باشا أما السيلة كانوا يعني مجموعة السيل ما باسكر بعضي كان فيكسبون بعضي كان ماجرتريبون أو موبايلبون. Regarding the fibers of the connective tissue, if you take شوية fiber man here, so we have three types of connective tissue fibers: collagen, elastic, and reticular. The amount and arrangement of these fibers depend on the function of tissues or organs in which they are found. Organic, the concentration or the comparison, the presence of collagen to elastin to reticular is different from one organ to other according to the main function of that organ. The fibrous components of connective tissue are elongated structures formed from proteins that polymerize after secretion from fibroblasts. Fibroblast function which is the main cell of the connective tissue, is to synthesize both the protein fibers, ground substance. So those fibers are secreted from the fibroblast. The collagen and reticular fibers are both formed by proteins of collagen family. طبعا هم جوالي لو فايبرانا جوالي بروتين سبيونيتي يعني التيايتي كدوسيكا So in the case of the collagen and reticular, it's the collagen family of protein that forms the fiber or the subunit of that fiber. While in the case of elastic fibers, the protein is elastin. Joy protein ka. These fibers are distributed unequally among the different types of connective tissue, with predominant fiber usually responsible for conferring specific tissue properties. يعني شي فايبر كزور predominant أو زيادة أو tissue برنامج أو فايبر نوعية أو featureاني إبه regarding this type of tissue. In general, أجرو في schematic diagram سيري كان شيوي فايبر كمان شون دركويا بويل slide بينا سينو بعسني. سيمان هي بونو مانيرا these are the collagen fibers طبعا which is the more predominant. Collagen fiber usually they run in bundles. يعني fiber كان which is the main subunit or functional unit of the collagen fiber of the collagen bundle. عادة بتنيان أروا. They run in bundles. بجروب أروا بويا استور دركيولوجيا ماكروسكوبا and can see them easily. وبستينا كان يفهم which is routine HNE. They stand faint or pinkish in color. باشا they are white and pink in color. وأبدأ بلا مختبر كي أمر بس يعني كل جماعة بوتان مستقام. So this is about the collagen fibers as you see them. They are going to be bundles. Sorry. These are this is the bundles of the collagen fibers which stain pinkish or eosinophilic in color, while this thread-like black in color fibers and much thinner than the collagen fiber, these are the elastic fibers. The elastic fiber feature they do not group as bundles. Point نقدر كذا thread-like. باشا وطالع قشدر كذا الميكروسكوب under the microscope. I will show you in the next slides. And these thin threads, like here, they are stained black, باشا, and they join each other. Balanchi, open network Kenya. They are somewhat long. In the case of the reticular type of fibers, they are short and connecting with each other in the form of network. The reticular fiber, they are very thin, thinner than the elastic fiber, and they come in the form of a meshwork or a network. That's why they are found mostly in the lymphoid organs, through which they form a meshwork that supports the cells of the lymphoid tissue or the lymphoid organs. Again, collagen fiber came, which is the most abundant type of the connective tissue. We say that it runs in the form of bundles, and these bundles may be straight, may be wavy, The bundles are made up of collections of individual collagen fibers, which are 1 to 12 micrometer in diameter. The bundles often branch or anastomose with adjacent bundles, but the individual fibers do not branch. With the electron microscope, each collagen fiber is seen to be made of fibrils that are 20 to 200 nanometer in diameter. Each fibril consists of a number of microfibrils, under the electron microscope have fibrils show characteristic cross striation or periods. بشوفوا ستايلك paternity خط أبينين لنا fibrils كان, which shows after every 67 nanometer interval. Collagen is not only synthesized by fibroblasts but by other cells. Cell can interject collagen مقود رسكا beside the fibroblasts, chondroblasts, osteoblasts, smooth muscle cell, منوي درسية. أجل سيري في ليرة الدياجراما، طبعاً الدياجراما هربوا معلوماتي خوتن، باشا عملية مطلوب من الامتحان. بس بالنسبة لكتشري ثيورين هي أبيهم basic information البابين. باشا the basic constituent or functional units of this collagen fiber. أجل سيري في ليرة مش من هي collagen fiber كمان هي. You can see this is a collagen fiber. يك collagen fiber one fiber. Fiber كفوي لمجموعة شيء كاتوا collagen fibrils. باشا مجموعة collagen fibrils collect together from collagen fiber. إن جدول collagen fiber كان بيك أو فوقنا بندل ما نقول بسكة collagen bundle. كمان تنهال collagen fiber أهل elastic fiber they will not form bundles. باشا so the collagen bundles form a larger diameter structure under the light microscope. أجل بكرة both the basic constituent or component of this collagen fibril, alpha chain precursor of protein. Or we have this polypeptide chain ينها كسير in subunit Druskalawa, 2 alpha unit and 1 beta, not beta, 2 alpha 1 and 1 alpha 2. أشوف بس معلومات الخطانة. أول شيء نبزاني collagen fiber group of بنضم دروسكا و each collagen fiber is composed of groups of collagen fibrils. بوشيورا. أجد تابكاني باسكين regarding the types أو مطلوبة للامتحان. You have to know the different types of collagen. طبعا قلنا مركي صورة لبعث التكست بوكا أو بستوبينش لبعث بوكا says it's more than 28 types. بس إما the main types كان تنبو باسكين is the main type أنا you have to know them and بزاني لشو organic هيا. For example, type 1, which is the most predominant type, هم سياترا باشا, are found in tendons, ligaments, fascia, aponeurosis, derms of the skin, and in the meninges. They form the fibrous basis of the bone, fibrocartilage. Zana location is also it is spread around the body. It is the most predominant type. Feature that differentiated from other types of collagen. They have large diameter. يعني بنطلقاني قولترا. So it appears with يعني collagen fiber with larger diameter, about 25 nanometer. Prominent cross striation. أجر حاسو خنخاتك أو pattern خنخاتي زور واضح به. So is one distinction factor between the different types of collagen. And in general, they are very strong, very resilient, so they are found in those parts of the body that needs resistant to pressure, like the tendons, ligaments, bones. Basha Amshrahan. Amish slide up for the type 1 collagen here on the right side. This bundle, this thick bundle, is the type 1 collagen. Basha Amana, nucleus Fibroblasts. These are the nuclei of the fibroblast. Balam so collagen fiber kabini. Balam left from microscope so واضح is one striation kabini. So on the left you see the both the transverse section and longitudinal section of type 1 collagen fibers. Here in the transverse section you cannot recognize the striation pattern. Balam longitudinal beside it here. And this one, you can clearly see the striation pattern of the collagen fibrils. But regarding type 2, these are of two subtypes. The larger of these are about 100 nanometer in diameter, while the narrower fibers are about 20 nanometer in diameter. In type 2, collagen striation are less prominent than type 1. Both show a distinction type 2 collagen. They are the fibrous basis of hyaline cartilage and elastic cartilage. What is the most common type of collagen, for example, in the bone? What is the most common type of collagen in the elastic and hyaline cartilage? So you have to know the location of different types of collagens. Type 3, this is a special type of collagen which is very thin and it forms the reticular fibers, so it's usually found in lymphoid organs in which the reticular fibers are abundant. While type 4 is in the form of short filaments, thin diameter short filaments that form network that supports the cells, so it is found in the basement membrane or in the basal lamina of epithelial cells. So while type 5, this type is found in the wall of the blood vessels. This was about the collagen fibers. What about the reticular fibers? The reticular fibers, they are more delicate, thinner as we mentioned. They are formed in collagen type 3. They are formed from collagen type 3. This collagen forms an extensive network or a reticulum of extremely thin diameter. They show periodicity or striation again of 67 nanometer striation at close intervals. They differ from typical type 1 collagen fibers. They are much finer and have uneven thickness. Feature in general, they form a network or reticulum, so they are thin, short forming networks. They do not run in bundles. They can be stained specifically by silver. Silver stain marker, so they will stain black. They take the color of black. They can thus be easily distinguished from type 1 collagen, which stained mostly brown. عادة type 1, which is the thick bundle, عادة ما بكون brown area. ليلة نفس السلايد هربكي أبيني with the low power and high power. استخدم high power بيبيني. So these are the short networks of the thin reticular fibers. طبعا أنا these are the cells of the lymphocytes of the lymphoid organs. So this meshwork support these small sized lymphocytes. ليلة low power AB. Okay, low AB. So they stain black, network black. Reticular fibers, as we mentioned, they form the network in the lymphoid organs. The lymph node, the bone marrow, most glands, liver, and kidneys. Reticular fibers form an essential component of all basement membrane. The basement membrane is بس عادة the basement membrane اللي بيتنرجع. Mainly collagen type 4. Mainly يعني قلت لك بالسيارة يك بلانك بوهات. What is the type of the collagen of basement membrane and C type 4. باشا أقل دو بلانك هبه C type 4 and Untitled باشا which is the reticular fiber يعني collagen type 3. تيجي شلون so many type 4 basement membrane. باش again these two slides are of the lymphoid organs so reticular fiber كما زور وصحة هم يليبون كراوة. Regarding the elastic fibers, amantia, they are thin, just like the reticular fibers, but amantia much longer, dreshtra, network drusnaka. Rasta branch how they meet each other and branch with each other, but not in the form of network, as in the case of the reticular fibers. They have less tensile strength, يعني زور بقطنية بعكس elasticity here. هلنا وكيف هو يبقى major protein كبدروسية كسبيل KT is the elastin protein type. So it's more elastic. Usually they run singly, not in bundles, branch and elastomas with each fibers, with other fibers. In some situations, elastic fibers are thick. لا بعزي شوينا كفي استيبوية strength كيزيات البي لكن the ligamentum lava. So in here they run in the form of bundles. Sometimes they are formed in the form of a fenestrated layer. طبعا وشي fenestrated layer. Fenestrated membranes known as porous. Porous يعني كلكلة. باشا عادة يكوها أو جوار elastic fiber in the wall of the blood vessels. Elastic fibers are composed mainly of protein called elastin that forms their central amorphous core, and the other fibrils are made up of glycoprotein called fibrillin. Periodic striations are not present in elastic fibers. However, striation elastic هي mainly the collagen هي ولا reticular fiber هي طبعا elastic there is no striation pattern أو أبي ميزانية. أقرب diagram لنا schematic representation you can see the core of an elastic fiber. أقرب elastic fiber وأقرب core this in the center. This amorphous material in the center is the protein elastin, which is responsible for the elasticity of that fiber, and this microfibrils outside, this pinkish color microfibrils. Amanichi biotre fibrillin. Basha? Fibrillin. So you have to know the basic components of this fiber. So this is a very nice slide. Almost in امتحان slide awatan boyet. Basha this type of slide. Keped alayım. Differentiate the two types of the, or identify the type of the fiber, protein fiber that you see in the microscope. طبعا اللي رأينا checking, we will use the label or the arrow and we will ask which type of fiber is this. اللي رأينا حالته two type fiber ما هي recognizing. We have this one, Rasha, which is pinkish in color and the diameter is wide. This is the collagen fibers running between the elastic fibers. It's a boy here in collagen كل دواء كن سهل collagen كذاني boy here سهم كنسر elastic as in this case. So you have to mention which type of fiber you see here. Collagen running in between. So for example, this one, this dark thread-like fashion, and in between running this large larger diameter pinkish color, which is the bundles of collagen. شكوت من elastic عادة ببندل نروة تنكترا, while the collagen is in bundles, it is wider and pinkish in color, lighter in color. Again, elastic fibers of the connective tissue are produced by fibroblasts, and elastic tissue again found in the wall of the blood vessels. The smooth muscle cells synthesize the elastic fiber. يعني هو عادة fibroblast دروسية كابلام أو elastic tissue or fiber كهي لوالي blood vessel كنا عادة شيء دروسية the smooth muscle cells. شو smooth muscle cell هي لو والنا. If you remember from your cardiovascular module. So we have, for example, the aorta, or the pulmonary tract. If we take a cross section through the wall of the aorta, it has 3 layers: tunica intima, tunica media, and tunica adventitia, or serialia. The middle one, which is tunica media, is composed mainly of this. This layer, from here to here, is composed of elastic fibers. تقريبا كنجابو حفتها layering elastic fibrity, which is responsible for the contraction and relaxation of the wall of large vessels. This type is usually synthesized by the smooth muscle cells, which is found in between the layers of the blood vessel. Lastly, we have the ground substance, which is the last component of the connective tissue. Basi cell markers, basi fiber can markers, and we have the ground substance. I can put a series diagram of the So this is a diagram or illustration of the connective tissue in general. Cell Kahneman basket. Here we have the cells, different types of cells. We have the fibers, the collagen, the elastic, and in between these empty spaces, it's filled with the ground substance. So the ground substance of the extracellular material is highly hydrated structure. It is transparent. It's a complex mixture of macromolecules, amino acids, glycosamidiglycans, proteoglycans, and glycoproteins. Amana, as it's difficult to you, but enumeration أبي بيساني. مثلا أقدر what are the macromolecules of the ground substance أو سيانة glycosamidiglycans, proteoglycans, and glycoproteins. A mixture of different types of proteins and sugar moiety. It fills the spaces between the cells and fibers in the connective tissue, and this viscous material acts both as a lubricant and a barrier to the penetration of invaders. يعني two functioning here: supporter, lubricant. لها it acts as a messenger, growth factor, travel through this ground substance between the cells and the fibers to send messages. So it is the media through which the messages transfer between the cells and fibers. So this was our first lecture. You can have a rest and we will continue the second part of the connective tissue. Connective tissue بهم نوع ثاني. هذا نوعين. طبعا استخدمنا أنا بس classification connective tissue الثاني. ثاني ما نبدأ شيء كاتو أماني وثاني أنواع ثاني شيء classification الثاني كفاية للشاب. So the classification of connective tissue depends on 2 factors: the component that predominates in the tissue or the structural characteristic of the tissue. Connective and supportive tissues are classified into 2 main groups with several subgroups as in this table. Here, the connective tissue in general. See major fragment here. Connective tissue proper. This classification is very important. Okay, and the connective tissue with special properties and supporting connective tissue. Mainly the connective tissue proper, and some of the connective tissue with special properties, and we will leave the supportive connective tissue, which is the cartilage and bone, to Dr. Snow. She will present it to you in upcoming lectures. So regarding the connective tissue proper, we have 2 parts: loose and dense. And the dense is further subclassified to regular and irregular. Just to remind you, mesenchyme is the embryonic layer from which the different types types of connective tissue in body in general arise from and the different types of the connective tissue cells. But you have to know some special types of connective tissues. For example, the gelatinous or the mucous connective tissue, or a special form of one of the special types of connective tissue. This is a mucoid or mucous connective tissue. Another embryonic type of connective tissue found mainly in the umbilical cord and in fetal organs. A similar form of connective tissue is also found in the pulp cavities of the young teeth, which remains as a postnatal source of the mesenchymal stem cell. However, الامتحان أجر دواء location mucous tissue liquidity or mucoid gelatinous tissue and hormonal umbilical cord, bulb of the young teeth, bolumina, and fetal organs. The gelatinous tissue contains collagen fibers and a few elastic or articular fibers. Like I see, this collagen or mucoid tissue case it is delicate, very delicate, viscous, ground substance on the expense of fibers and cell. Cell fiber gelatin ground substance gelatinous type of connective tissue. This ground substance is composed chiefly of the hyaluronic acid. Slides here again, we have two slides. On the left side, we see a few number of mesenchymal cells. Selacani is the mesenchymal cells, which is the stem cell for other connective tissue cell. Fibroblasts is mostly the mesenchymal cells. And with abundant ground substance or space ground substance with a few collagen fibers, which is pinkish in color. These are the collagen fibers. The spaces, empty spaces, is filled with the viscous, mucous, or ground substance. is stained with the regular routine H&E stain. Regarding the connective tissue proper, it is of two types as we mentioned in the classification, the loose or the areolar connective tissue, the loose connective tissue is very common and generally supports epithelial tissue, however it is the more predominant, loose is more predominant than dense or baxani. The loose connective tissue typically contains cells, fibers, and ground substance in roughly equal parts. هسه component equal to each other. Component the most numerous cells are the fibroblasts, but the other types of connective tissue cells are also present along with rich blood supply and nerve supply. And those connective tissue with the rich nerve and blood supply. Underlying the epithelial tissue, which is avascular. Epithelium is avascular. It derives its nutrition and its blood and nerve supply from the underlying connective tissue. Which is usually the loose type, which is rich in blood supply. Collagen fibers predominate. Fibers collagen and ground substance loose connective tissue has a delicate consistency. Open tissue is delicate. Resistance it's not resilient. It is flexible and not very resistant to stress or feature. diagram سيريكين أما diagram by the way أما slide بيهم باشا دائما الدياجرام رسمك وكو components زيادة الجوانتر واضحة بيدوي diagram كأتواني شيء histology slide بين والله ممكن امتحان أو مطلوب ليتان histology slide أما diagram أنا تنها بخوتان أكادر باش. So we can see here, for example, the cells and mast cell. This is another mast cell. These are the fibroblasts, the macrophage, macrophagia, and the fibers. This long three-type fiber, which is the elastic fiber. This bundle of collagen fiber, which is pinkish in color, and in between the spaces, these are the spaces through which the ground substance is accumulated. The loose or the areolar connective tissue, it fills the spaces of the body just deep to the skin, and the skin absorbs components. It lies below the mesothelial lining of internal body cavities. Mesothelium, which covers the body cavities or lining cavities in the body. It is associated with the adventitia of the blood vessel. يعني all blood vessel تلاقي vein bear, capillary bear, venule bear, artery bear. أجر how to cut the curve. Ciliary tiara and ciliara. لنا وبودروا tunica antima, tunica media, and tunica adventitia. باشا. عادة أمجورا نتوعد ليري دروي blood vessel which is called adventitia. ويأنا وكلاتان سيرنبيل. هرچند أخوي مفروضة أولا مودول كارديوفاسكولار بطن باسكرابي يعني من براستي لام سيرة لكارديوفاسكولار مودول بطن دكتور. I'll tell them ما مستكان زان watch بس نكراو بطن احتمال بين just to teach it to you بس in general زان أو سيلاري تيايا wall blood vessel in general and this loose one is forming part of the adventitia. كده درو blood vessel here. Also, it surrounds the parenchyma of the glands. Parenchyma شمال باسكرت والامتحان وقتها يعني اعتيادي بدلات شو من الليكتشر باسم كله ولا مختبريش باسم كله. تومانا همو organ parenchyma وستروما يدير. Just write it down. فمطلوبة لتان امتحان. Every organ in the body. Asha has parenchyma and stroma. Parenchyma contains the main functioning part of that organ. Basha iteragar pulmonary gland organa, it contains the secretory portion that synthesizes the hormones pulmonary and the enzyme. Basha, while stroma is that part of the organ that supports the parenchyma, runs between the parenchyma. Basha, it is mostly of connective tissue. Basha, it's thin lines or plates of connective tissue that support the parenchyma. So, for example, here, when we say it surrounds the parenchyma of the glands, we mean it supports them. But as a judge, especially capsule organ, like for example, the capsule of the kidney or the capsule of any organ. Also, the loose connective tissue of the mucous membrane, the canal or elementary canal. Beneath the epithelium, we have this type of connective tissue, which is called lamina propria. And we mentioned the term lamina propria many times. You have to recognize it. You have on the right a slide for the skin, okay? And the upper part of the slide, we see the type of the epithelium, which is the stratified, keratinized, squamous epithelium, which is the usual epithelium of the skin. And with this keratin layer, epithelium. And these are the living layers of the epidermis. This layer, epidermis, this canal. If you look here beneath the epithelium, here, this is the basal layer of the epithelium. Beneath it, this is the light layer here, which is faint in color or pinkish in color. This is the connective tissue layer which supports the epithelium. Here, this type is composed of loose connective tissue. Basha, where loose connective tissue, one location is example is the skin, the connective tissue that underlies the skin. Bash. But this connective tissue here, it has two parts. The superficial one, which lies directly beneath the epithelium, is called the papillary layer. Or papillary layer. Lusaka عادة papillary layer, while the deeper one, here, from here to here is the papillary layer, which is a loose connective tissue type. While deeper than this is the dermal layer, reticular layer. Sorry, the reticular layer is much thicker. Another location here, for example, in between the ductal system of the glands. This is the loose connective tissue, which is found between the cross-section of the ducts of a major salivary gland. Regarding the dense connective tissue, both non-majority hair, regular or irregular hair, feature can change in general. They contain a greater abundance of fibers. A great component is cell fiber ground substance. They are neutral somewhat. So the ground substance is flexible anticipate. While in the dense one, we see a large number of fibers on the expense of cells and ground substance. كواتا fibers ياكا باشا cell كم ترى وground substance هرزور كم ترى. Where it was looked dense or compact tissue. It contains most of the components found in the loose connective tissue, except that it has more fibers and fewer cells. The orientation and arrangement of the bundles of collagen fibers in this tissue make it resistant to pressure. Coelera, denstra, compactera, and it is more resistant to pressure. Subtype Connective, dense irregular connective tissue and dense regular. The irregular, it contains fiber bundles arranged randomly. Irregular, it is composed of mostly, of course, collagen fibers interwoven into a meshwork that resists pressure from all directions. Amjora عادة بتكون irregular, when the fibers running randomly, so it will protect the tissues from traction from different directions. If you are right tissue, it will resist. طالما أجل هاد regular بيبقى اتجاه, so it will prevent the traction or resist traction and pressure only in one direction. These collagen fiber bundles are packed so tightly, resulting in limitation of the spaces provided for the ground substance in the cells. Fine networks of elastic fibers are often scattered among the collagen bundles. Fibroblasts, the most abundant cells of this tissue, are located in the narrow spaces. Bone lemeroilan حامضة جرحاته dense bit كوتا ground substance من كمان سيلتان حشرة bit يعني هنا compact bit لبيني protein fiber كان as I will show you in this slide. So هون من الليرة here on the right side we have this slide stayed with HNE. طبعا كثير slide كي in general رأيكي pink ebony كأمر pink ebony زيادة باشتوا توقعي collagen fiber. These are the predominant large number of bundles of collagen fiber that we said it will stain eosinophilic or pinkish in color. In the spaces we see the cells. These are the cells. It's difficult with that microscope to recognize the cell wall itself, but you can see the nuclei, the densely bluish stained nuclei. So these are the nuclei of the fibroblasts or macrophages, whatever type of connective tissue cells. Ground substance like you have this ground substance, but it is little, not as in the loose type. So the tissue is more compact with fibers. This is another slide, but more so it depends on how the slide is prepared. Not well prepared. Undergraduate regarding the location of the dense irregular connective tissue, طبعا توليرا فلاكم هو أبيض وشوي ميزاني. نروح في فيلم تفسير كثير بيغير location ميزاني لتنقل بلام لا connective tissue do location. So two examples. It constitutes the dermis of the skin again. Dense irregular again أوش هي sheaths of the nerves, capsules of the spleen, testes, ovaries, kidney, and lymph nodes. On the left side, in this slide, again we have the slide of the skin. How slide is going to take that issue in with low power, so this is the layer of the epithelium, and this is the keratin. So this is the epidermis, epidermis skin, which is the epithelium of the skin. Beneath it comes the dermis. A connective tissue beneath the epidermis is the dermis. In the dermis, two layers here, as we mentioned. Or is there a papillary layer or reticular layer? Papillary layer, which is directly beneath the epithelium, is which type? Who remembers? Loose connective tissue. Very rich in nerve and blood supply. We need it for the epithelium. Okay? Loose is more rich with the nerve and blood supply, so it is nearer to the epithelium. Beneath it comes the more dense one, which is the reticular layer. وكنا reticular layer بيوتين. Papillary and reticular. طبعا معناها هو السكنة يفرن. So this type, which is the dense irregular connective tissue here, this one, is the papillary layer of the dermis. الكيوشا here, in the wall of the large blood vessels. يسمون هنا aorta هي اللي have cross section يمكن blood vessel كان. Here aorta. So the first layer is tunica intima. This thick layer أمامه is tunica media, and this thin layer here, which is very faint or pale in color, running here صاصية is adventitia. أو ناس بورتا نقول أو ما يورتا نقول بيجان شو cardiovascular. So we'll discuss this with the doctors there. Anyway, again, I'm starting with elastic fiber. Approach comes media, tunica media, only elastic fiber. The whole thickness of tunica media is composed of elastic type of fibers. And it receives high pressure from the pumping heart, so it needs to distend and relax. Where do you see the elastic fiber? طبعا أجل شيء الأري دروا here this layer is the pale layer of adventitia. Adventitia is composed of what? Of dense irregular connective tissue. Okay. Regarding the dense regular type, this term refers to the subtype of dense connective tissue in which the fiber bundles are arranged in parallel or organized pattern. This subtype of dense connective tissue is further subdivided: Bocci, dense regular collagenous type, and dense regular elastic type, according to the organ or the place of location function. One here dense regular connective tissue here. This slide here. Here you can see a group of collagen bundles running parallel to each other. Thick bundles of collagen, and collagen. In between runs the nuclei, flattened nuclei of the fibroblasts and fibrocytes. However, always to show the compact ground substance man كما nuclei can شبه حشو بين bundles of the collagen fibers or the elastic fiber. طبعا elastic شيء كان. طبعا غير زيادة الكولاجين كذا كوتو. You can see the nuclei عشان يكون حاولنا collagen كجديان. ويا الامتحان سلايد كيوبوها طبعا يكمش كتوسيل سلايد التأكيد ملاحظين شيء you recognize the شيء organized pattern. باشا أبيني مجموعة bundle or structures running organizedly randomly. So كأمد دي توقعي شيء كذي regular part. باشا regular part كم هذا regular هذا شيء أما denser. It is a dense type of connective tissue. ملاحظة شيء كتير شيء space نية empty space نية كتبت السلايد you cannot see ها empty spacer is the space for the ground substance. ملاحظة أكيد so it is the number of the fibers fully is in the slide you cannot recognize empty spaces in between. أتواني nuclei يساوي كم minimum ground substance كان أتواني minimum. So this is another criteria to differentiate the slide and the microscope. Regarding the dense regular collagenous, طبعا we can منشبه dense regular connective tissue تابعها collagenous أو elastic. Collagenous كانت هنا and okay it's filled with collagen fibers. The fibers running regularly. طبعا شجرتها it is collagenous. It is composed of coarse collagen fiber. Fiber can resorb cellular, densely packed and oriented into parallel, cylindrical or sheets that resist tensile forces. The ground substance and cells are present in narrow spaces between the tightly packed fibers or bundles. The fibroblasts, which appear thin and sheet-like, are located between the collagen fiber bundles with their longitudinal axis parallel to the bundles. يعني منطقة شلون أول fiber كان يعني nucleus كان fibrocyte كان running with the bundles. Location كله tendon ligaments upon the rostrum. لا شيء اللي لا شك في وسط resilience مو مقاومة pressure exposure. You can find this type, for example, in the tendons, or the aponeurosis of the organs. There are also bundles of connective tissue in between the nuclei of the cells. While the dense regular elastic type, regular fibers elastic consists of coarse branching elastic fibers. There are fibers elastic mostly. Collagen sheet mostly elastic. In the form of networks scattered throughout the interstitial blood vessel, it is fenestrated, or has pores. Another example is the ligamentum flavum of the vertebral column, or the suspensory ligaments of the penis. Again, it means tensile or elasticity more. So it has this type of dense regular connective tissue, the elastic one. Clear out so we have this elastic fibers compact with collagen fibers. So this is the elastic fibers. With high power, and the spaces is filled with collagen fibers. Regarding the reticular, all as term reticulariat except lymphoid organs. The featurity lymphoid organ. It is the meshwork of lymphoid organs. So it's composed mainly of individual reticular fibers arranged in the form of meshwork interspaced with fibroblasts and microfibrils. عادة لو organana زيادة شيء يمين بس reticular fiber collagen elastic كم يمين يستعمل مثلا هذا reticular وسيالة ثانية organic which is lymphocytes يعني voluminous plasma cell. Another special type of tissue in the classification of Habas-Mankel is adipose tissue. Adipose tissue, we have the white unilocular adipose tissue and the brown. Regarding the white, this type of adipose tissue appears white because it consists of large number of unilocular fat cells. And unilocular يعني أكثرها تصير سيالات السنتري سيالات تنهاي dropletic rate of fat element. يبدأ طبعا ده brown one. It is multiple fat droplets. Each of which contains a single lipid droplet. The white adipose tissue is heavily supplied with blood vessels and from the capillary network surrounding it. The slide that I said is also was a slide. The adipose tissue, by the way, لامتحان سوري دور يكفي في السلايد الأسانة كامل. كتلبي undergraduate وتر أساني أين أسيتهم. مثلا لنا سلايد هو يعني نيجي ليبلين الثانية ألم identify the slide. Which type of tissue you see? Which type of connective tissue مثلا you see? So لنا ألم adipose tissue. أجل تفاصيل التيشو. Principal هنا mention the features or criteria of the cells of this tissue. بس criteria adipose cell. أقول شوية امتحان ثاني. Regarding the brown or the multilocular adipose tissue, is a brown fat. It's composed of multilocular fat cells which store fat and multiple droplets. It may appear tan or reddish brown in color because of the extensive vascularity of supply zora, mitochondrial zora, so it takes this brownish reddish color. Brown fat is very vascular supply because the blood vessels are located near the adipocyte. And لو إيش لكيل عادة للفانتانا يعني. لدو أتمنى صالة البلبلة نعمل لا دوتها نعمل أوجورا. أوكي. And thank you. Exercise كان هيك وكان امتحان الشكل الامتحان ويفاسي في نوع يعني ببالة أكثر شيء مطلوب لك